Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's had a beautiful week. Just going to make sure that the sound is coming in good. Yes, that is all being checked. Okay, so how is everyone's week? Okay, now that all that is up and running. So, this week I've got a fair few stories that I'm hoping that you'll get right into. Let's jump right in and see how we go. All right. So if you see a bit of the clutter, we're in the process of finding a new place and seeing what we need and what we don't need. And in that process, apparently my keyboard died. I think I killed it through trying to internet search for a new place. So that happened. So make sure that you leave a like, a comment if you find something interesting that I'm talking about. So, first story for tonight. We're going to talk about inflation causes. Now, the reason I want to discuss this is because I think the media has this interpretation of this that I don't agree with. Like, I'm not just going to find some random cafe owner and ask them how it works. I want to delve a little bit deeper than that. My belief, see, here's where I'm coming from. Okay, so, where is it? Okay, here we go. So, it's their interpretation of, well, stores can use the pandemic and say, well, there's a war going on in Ukraine and the petrol prices are different because of that. And then you have them saying, well, what if it's because there's supply chain issues because of COVID and keeping workers in the job. And when I read this article, I thought, why would you put it out there that all of these things lead to a more expensive time? The same product is still being made. They still have employees. It doesn't cost more to make it or to ship it. So at what point do you go, no, that doesn't sound right? Because it's not. To me, it's not right. I do not see this evidence that they're using, okay? And then they're doing supply and demand. That's a real thing. Okay, let's attack that. So then you had businesses that were deliberately not supplying stores with some items so then they could charge you more for it, like essentials. The price of milk and bread incrementally went up, and a lot of other things. It wasn't just fuel, these were basic things that we needed. The price of pasta and basic needs. Toilet paper went up ridiculously. Now, this was part of their plan. It was half say, oh, well, we don't have the workers because of COVID. Oh, but part two, if we do have the workers, it's not as many as we thought, so we get to charge you more for it. That doesn't make sense. It's a weird system of how. So when I looked at that, I thought that's a bit of a strange way of displaying that. I really want to put it to retailers like this. You had a choice. You chose to be on the opposite side of the public. You chose to create a system where all the prices went up and then we were just sort of left hanging and going, Well, now not only is there less supply coming in, but you're also charging us more for that supply. I don't believe it's as dire as what they say. I see a lot of recruitment ads for supermarkets and for shelf stackers and all that kind of stuff, but they're not paying that worker anymore. So, how can you charge me more for the product if, for instance, you're going to say, well, there's less of it? That's not a good reason to charge me more. It's a strange system of what they've put out there. But here's the other interesting part of when I was reading this. I thought the floods in Queensland, New South Wales, and the energy crisis up and down the east coast also pushed up the prices to pay for gas, electricity, and food. But according to the Australian Institute, the only accounts for a proportion of price rises that we're seeing. Indeed, it goes as far as to say majority of the increases in living costs is due to the companies marking up prices as much as they can. And boom, that's where it is. They were driving up costs. So we're not paying anything more because there was really this big problem. No, we're paying more because they just wanted us to pay more, and they're profiting off some very awful times. That's got to stop. The very fact that the media now can finally concede, indeed, it goes so far to say that majority of it, the increases in living costs is due to the companies marking up prices as much as they can. That is everything you need to know. You can make it as complex as you want, but the simplistic 30,000 feet view is they just wanted to. So they created the infrastructure to make the rhetoric sound great. Like, we couldn't get the workers. Okay, so you got some workers. So when you got those workers, right, were you paying them more for that service? No. So why did you charge us more? Oh, supply and demand. Oh, but you weren't supplying us with the right amount to begin with. No, it was a lie. And it was a lie built on this institutionalized thing of saying, well, we can just make prices whatever we want to. So you're living in this moment of absolute chaos purely because businesses just decided, well, I want to charge you more for it. That simple statement alone should have sent alarm bells, but it didn't. And there's no real push to make these companies be more friendly to the public. I haven't heard anyone say, hey, you know that thing with real estate's ripping you off like crazy because the market told them to? There isn't a push for anyone to go, hey, don't do that because it's going to do people harm. This is why I'm moving and millions of others are moving right now from their homes because they want to charge me an extra $120 a fortnight in my rent. So, for the same house with all the same issues, but because inflation's happening. It's an incredible thing. They drove up that cost. They made sure that they were driving it well and truly up, but they didn't need to. They just wanted to increase the cost because they could. I don't know what's worse, the fact that they knew and that there's this whole system that knows that's what's going on, or that we have to just live with it and there's no real desire to change that. I think that's where I'm frustrated the most because I know that the price of fuel is slowly coming down, but in September, do you know that the fuel excise will be bumped up again because $1 trillion of debt needs to be paid somehow. And according to the new government, that's one of the ways how they're going to have to make the ends meet. That's it. So we are really out there on our own for a little sec until we can figure out what this parliament's going to pass. Unless they regulate it so they can't just keep ridiculously jacking up prices, causing inflation. Now, we did have that weird speech from the LNP going, oh, if you pay them more, prices are going to go up. That's not actually how any of that ever works. And here's why. The cost of that product typically is encased in that product. So that whole chain of whatever it is, it's encased there. They don't need to really do that. And it's so small and minuscule. Any pay rise, like $1 an hour, come on, they were kidding themselves. That wasn't going to drive up inflation. They were lying. They were lying because unfettered capitalism has done its designed work and screwed everyone over. Unless you're like, I don't know, upper middle class and super rich, you wouldn't notice this thing at all. But I think rich people might, because they're a bit greedy, and then they're like, yeah, I don't want to part with that much money. Hence their amazing ability to avoid paying taxes. But that's a whole nother debate. This thing is ingrained, and we need to reverse the Reaganomics that made it to our shores. And I can assure you, this isn't like some sort of ginned up thing that come about just with this LNP government. No. They've been doing this since the 70s. In the 80s, it really got momentum. This thing took off. And everyone, but the thing is, the left then didn't know how to control the narrative. Now they do. Now they know that there's a problem. And now they know that they've got to fix that problem. So how do you do it? You do things like regulating businesses from doing crap like that. And you say, that's not acceptable. But it doesn't just stop there. There's also this that I wanted to show you. This is what I found super interesting. So this was the other thing. With all this high demand for workers and stuff, and the employment rate being so low, how come the wages haven't met to this inflation? That's the other incredible thing. Everything else skirted along beautifully. Everything did its job, but wages didn't. The productivity was up, everyone was going back to work, the supply chains were getting fixed, and everything was set back in motion. You know what didn't work? You know what hasn't worked for 30 years? Your productivity went up over 120%, but your wages didn't. They just didn't. And there's no good reason for it not to. Now, if they want to go and scream and cry and say, that's an inflationary thing. No, it's not. And if you want to claim that, sure, buddy, I'll debate that all day long. But it's just not. It's wrong. So this whole debate that you can't pay people more is a very strange way of handling it. I think that the unions have finally begun to win the war on the Reaganomics rhetoric. And I think that there's a lot of work to do. If you follow Sally McManus, she largely deals in this kind of stuff. Check her out. She has a Facebook, a Twitter, and I think she also does a podcast. So check out Sally McManus for any further information on that. So given that, I thought that we would discuss another issue that's on our mind. Now, what is happening with our fuel? Okay, so did you know that we had one of the dirtiest fuels in the world? I didn't. I knew it was dirty, but I didn't know it was the dirtiest in the world. Okay, so Chris Bowen took some time to address that very issue. So check out this 2-minute clip.
The amount of sulphur in Australian petrol makes it the dirtiest in the world. Now, the Albanese government is accelerating a plan to improve our fuel quality, which will deliver benefits for both our health and environment.
After years of being stuck in the slow lane on fixing our fuel quality,
Australia has some of the worst petrol in the world, the dirtiest petrol in the world.
the new government is fast-tracking the cleaning up of Australian standards, accelerating the deadline for phasing out high sulphur fuels from 2027 to 2024.
Why wait 3 years longer than we need to?
The current sulphur content in regular unleaded is 150 parts per million, 15 times the global standard. The change will see a limit of 10 parts per million imposed, bringing Australia in line with the rest of the world.
Almost all the advanced markets of the world, even places like China, India, have substantially higher quality fuel than Australia.
Dirty fuel isn't just
I just want to point out that he said that in the most derogatory way. Like, even China and India have cleaner fuel. Look, I think it's bad that we haven't had cleaner fuel, but I don't think it's bad that we're behind China and India. I think that it's common sense that we meet this line. I don't think there's anything derogatory in the statement that we're behind certain countries.
polluting the environment, it's bad for people's health. And by removing more sulphur dioxide from the atmosphere,
That'll make a big impact straight away on people with asthma, people with respiratory conditions.
the government estimates the move will save the health system $840 million. And while filling up with low sulphur gas will be marginally more expensive, households will only pay about $8 extra over 3 years.
People won't even notice the impact. It's so small over a long period of time.
You get better fuel economy.
So you're talking about better fuel economy for the health and welfare of you. But let me go one step further. It's also better for your car. So this isn't just one thing. It's a lot of things. And the very fact that it's taken this long to get us cleaner fuel, and the very fact that we won't notice this little part to it, I think it's an amazing thing. No, I cannot digest the whole 150 million parts per litre. I don't know how they broke that up, but it did sound amazing.
Economy out of your car, so it's actually maybe cheaper for most Australians to drive with high quality fuel and better engines.
In the short term, motorists will feel more petrol price pain when a cut to the fuel excise comes to an end in September, driving up the cost of living pressures on households.
We're doing what we can to alleviate those burdens.
But pulling the handbrake on fuel relief won't help. Eliza Edwards, 9 News.
So this is a really, really, really important issue. So not only will we get cleaner fuel, but the fuel excise will be jacked back up in September. But I think we do need this cleaner fuel. We have the dirtiest fuel in the world. Why we have it like this, I don't know. That's insane. We should not have the worst fuel in the world. But I want to just skip back to that moment where he said even China and India have better fuel cleaning. Look, it doesn't matter which country has cleaner fuel. The very fact that we're this far behind in having the dirtiest fuel in the world, I think that's a problem considering that we pay some of the highest costs for fuel in this country, in the world. We pay astronomical prices. For instance, if you compare the American gallons to our litres, we're paying significantly more. Sure, the Americans get it in very dodgy ways, but that's a whole nother debate for me on a whole nother life. I think that this is going to be a really, really, really big deal. And I think you're going to notice this within the length of your car, that sort of thing. But I also want to state Labor does have a major election winning policy that they went with, which was electric vehicles. A lot of miners already use it. It's amazing. They're extracting coal and all these other minerals with an electric vehicle. Incredible. So the very resource that they're extracting, they don't even need to power this electric vehicle. All right, next one up. So I wanted to talk about the way that these questions are asked. So hold on, I've got to find it. So imagine an 11-year-old tweet sort of making its way onto the national scene. That's a dog. You're hearing a dog scratching at my door. That's what you're hearing. Okay, one sec. So listen to this 11-year-old tweet being put out there.
50% of women, is probably even more, after giving birth, experience incontinence. It's a major issue amongst women. How is it appropriate for your member for Lions, Brian Mitchell, to tweet about if this debate doesn't wrap up soon, we're going to need mops. Women don't do well holding on.
Well, I haven't seen that tweet. When is it from?
A few years ago, I think.
When is it from?
2011. Studies suggest up to about 50% of women.
These gotcha questions have to stop. This isn't journalism. This isn't how they're meant to do their job. This gotcha. No, you're meant to ask a legitimate question of the government of the day. They're not here for you to get your highlight reel in for your Murdoch spin. It's weird. Stop it. Look, I get it. You're a dying system of insanity. But you're dying purely because you allowed yourself to get politically motivated rather than being apolitical and not showing us who you were backing. That's what you should have done. You should have just called it balls and stripes as they are, and you didn't do it. You had your opportunity and you didn't take it. I truly think that there was a reason that they chose not to do that. And it was more than Murdoch. I think that they knew that they're very wealthy. A lot of these big news people get millions of dollars a year. So they were like, no, I'm actually protecting my personal interest. So it wasn't just the Murdoching of this media. It was in their best interest too. Like, have a look at some of their salaries. They were doing the conservative thing where the rich get to keep getting richer and kicking the poor was like the rhetoric that they had. And so I don't want to 100% blame Rupert Murdoch for that. I just don't. And I think that bad act of just blaming needs to stop. We need to be more even-ended about how we're going to address the media and what they're doing. Okay, so what was Scott Morrison's last horrendous act? So, hold on. So, this was like Children Overboard 2.0. And if you don't know what that is, there was a boat when Howard was Prime Minister, and there were these women and children, and they had their families in the boat. And John Howard's team concocted this story that it was never any fact in it, that women were throwing their children overboard to get to the country. Turns out none of it was true. Much like what Scott Morrison did here. Now, I've spoken to Conservatives about this. They're like, oh, no, that didn't happen quite like that. And I'm like, no, it really did. And here's the reality. Like, they can live in whatever la-la land they want. I have to live in the real world where there are real consequences to this. Refugees aren't coming here because they want to take something off you. No, they want to build a better country. They want to be in a better country. They're not fleeing something awful to make another place awful. That doesn't even make sense. Typically, they add an amazing amount of revenue to a new country as well because they want to be successful. And quite often they are. For instance, one of our best-known immigrants is Victor Cheng, and he was a renowned heart surgeon. He was later murdered, but that's a whole nother thing. But that's my point. Immigration brings an amazing emphasis on this country. This is who we are. I may have been born here, but I'm betting you that there were many, many, many families before me that weren't. And somewhere along the line, some of them came on a boat. For whatever reason they did. Same as my husband's family. Same deal. My people weren't just from here. They came from somewhere else and they made this their home. And for it, this country, better or worse, I would consider at this point a lot worse, for some of the actions of the past, has made things what Australia is. And here's the deal. They're normally white people that are claiming, that racist rhetoric on boat people. It's never people that literally are from that original Aboriginal tie. And even if they were, that's not what this country is. It's a multicultural country. Scott Morrison's final act as PM. The former Prime Minister Scott Morrison pursued public servants to publicise the interception of an asylum seeker boat on the day of May of the 2022 election, a damning report found. But the officials' Home Affairs had acted with integrity and refused to amplify the media statement. They were forced to write about border force operations unfolding on the high seas. The report into the extraordinary circumstances surrounding one of the last acts of the previous Morrison government was prepared by Secretary of Home Affairs Michael Peluso AO. Releasing the report on Friday, Labor's Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neil said the outgoing government pushed the public to publicise the border force operation for political gain as Australians were going to the polls. Look, this wasn't just one bad act either. The media was totally in on it. It was like they were getting tips left and right and centre, and they were going, no, run that story. And they did. They dutifully just went in. So we need to know what media, what they were told and how much they knew wasn't exactly like they put it out there to be. Did they know that they were contravening caretaker mode? That sort of stuff. This is the sort of stuff that I think we need to know as the people. We do not have this ability to undo what they did. But I tell you what we do. We understand that Conservatives will always pull stunts like this. Now, listening to how Claire put it was, not only was this move unprecedented, Miss O'Neil said it was sabotage of the protocols of Operation Sovereign Borders. On their border work, the most difficult and dangerous, the profound compromise of the military-led operation without precedent in Australia's history, Miss O'Neil went on to say, is disgraceful and shameful, a characteristic of the national government, which frequently pursue political interests above the national interests. On the day of the federal election, the Border Force authorities revealed an asylum seeker boat had been turned back. However, Ms. O'Neil said the report found uninformed Border Force and Force members and the public service acted with integrity at the highest standards of all time. In fact, they were ordered to send the media release about the boat interception to specific reporters and post it to social media, and the officials refused. Okay, media, your turn. Time for a bit of accountability. Why would you run the story? Why would you stupidly run a story like that, given two things? One, Border Force was not on board. Two, you knew it was in caretaker mode. You knew exactly what you were doing. Now, come on, you've been playing this three-ring circus game for a while. Don't play with me. You knew exactly what you were doing. Okay. So, any further questions on that one, Mr. Morrison? I kind of have a few, buddy. Okay. The next one, it's disturbing. I've been wondering about what Scott Morrison's thoughts were on what he thought it was like. Remember, we've had nearly 10 years of a Conservative government. So what would happen if we've had nearly 10 years of a Conservative government and the guy who just left 2 months ago said something so ridiculous that, oh my God, you cannot believe anyone ever entrusted him with anything? Well, I present to you a story just like that. Alrighty, Morrison's revelation. Australia has been living in a theocracy, and we've been waking up to it. The former Prime Minister believes himself to be a special in God's eyes and one of the chosen people, spreading the dominion of the Lord. So he has this weird belief that he doesn't believe in government and all that kind of thing, but he's still on a government salary as a backbencher, and he was the former Prime Minister. None of that makes any sense. But hey, I'm just poking the bear, right? Because I mustn't be, wise enough to catch on to the idiocy of the guy going, that's a bit weird. Why would you claim that? As the Liberal Party surveys the disaster of 2022 election, it needs to be read the sermon Scott Morrison delivered in Margaret Court's Church, Victory Life Centre last Sunday, and ensure that another Morrison can never again rise to the ranks to become a parliamentary leader or Prime Minister. The reason? Morrison's 50-minute sermon examined in detail reveals a man who lives in a starkly different reality from most Australians. See, it's frightening to think that he thought that he didn't trust governments, yet it was the government. It was frightening that he thought that, what government's role actually is. And that, when his children were born, and he had all these weird theories going around about when his wife gave birth to their first daughter. And like, Scott Morrison is this really bizarre guy that millions of Australians was like, I can go for this guy some more. I'm like, what is wrong with you? He's clearly mentally deficient somewhere to tell people, hey, I don't trust government, but I'm the government guy. And he's still drawing a salary from that. I can bet you that they cheered him on, by the way. Margaret Court's crowd at her church cheered this. They were like, yay, isn't he a wonderful... No, this is nuts. This is not who we want to be. I don't know who he thought we were, but this isn't it. The press gallery journalists should take time to closely examine the words of the 30th Prime Minister and ask themselves how they missed one of the biggest stories of the decade, the coming power of a politician so thoroughly enthralled of a niche religious belief. Now remember, there was talk that he was linked to Brian Houston and he was trying to get him to go to the White House, and his wife had all these ties to QAnon, and like there were all of these things going on, and now we find out that he didn't believe in government at all. Like, it's insane. And then he's telling people, no, it's totally a miracle. And even when it's not a miracle that I lost, I still think God's awesome. Sure, buddy. Look, however you want to believe in something, that is purely your discretion. But the moment you become part of government, here's what you can't do. You can't say government is an issue like that. You can't say government, you don't believe in it, and everything that's, government's not supposed to do all these things. You can pray to whatever deity you choose. I don't even care if it's real in anything. I said that wrong. I don't care how much it sounds ridiculous. I don't care if it's a flying unicorn. Just don't bring it to my parliament. We are a secular nation for a reason, and our population is largely secular. So, no, you're out of step here, Morrison, and I think you took it too far. This is painful and horrible. But, yeah, it's just another sign that I don't know how to deal with what they're doing. But it's not just that. It's them trying to defend themselves now. They got this thing where they're running around trying to defend their whole what they did and how they're doing it. Damn. The thing's playing way before I'm even ready. So here's the lead up. We were like, so what'd you do, Morrison? The whole boats thing. I'm going back to that. Sort of looping around back to that. So after we went through the whole, oh yeah, I'm just going to tell people about a boat. I'm going to, push this narrative. I'm going to have the media all involved. And then I'm going to tell people I don't believe in government. And now I'm going to have my former government tell people how to defend my record.
In hot water this morning, the former government, that is, then Prime Minister Scott Morrison and then Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews, accused of leaking the arrival of an asylum seeker boat on the day of the federal election against the express advice of the official department. Joining us to discuss today's talkers, former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews and senior reporter for the Saturday paper, Rick Morton. Good morning to you both. Karen, I want to start with you. Did you pressure the department to release that information to try and influence the election?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, the report makes it very, very clear that there was no breach of caretaker conventions. I asked the department to lawfully put out a statement, and actually it wasn't the department, it was the head of Operation Sovereign Borders. And I asked...
First thing, we're not sure if it did convene that, but I'm pretty sure it did breach caretaker mode. We're pretty sure it did.
Clearly, for the statement to be put out in a very situational awareness type of report. So it really just stuck to the facts. It just needed to be brief. It was just needed to be put out there so that it was clear that there had been a vessel that had been intercepted.
But is that the usual way of doing things, to put it out in real time?
I don't recall that there has ever been a boat that has been intercepted on election days.
I don't recall. That sounds like a testimonial thing. Like if ICAC came knocking, they'd be like, I don't recall. No, you knew. That's the weird thing about these. They know, and they know that they're lying.
So we weren't in circumstances that were every day of the week, thankfully. At all. So I think that it was appropriate to make sure that there was a very clear statement put out by the head of Operation Sovereign Borders, and that is exactly what happened.
Karen, isn't the point not that caretaker provisions weren't breached, but that you tried to pressure the department to breach those provisions? Isn't that the point of this whole report?
No, there was absolutely no pressure put on the department.
I mean, who were the people that were furious from your office? They were quoted in the report saying people are furious because it hadn't gone live yet while the Prime Minister was speaking. Why were you so keen to have it go live?
I really want to take you up on the issue of pressure being applied simply because it was a lawful request for that statement to go out. As you...
This is double speak for I'm caught, and you know what? That guy calling me up from the Saturday paper, you can't do that. That's what she's trying to do. She's trying to control the narrative and get the spin out. She isn't touching on the fact that her own staff was like, hey, this isn't great.
Probably read from the report.
Did you know about the campaign, the text message from Liberal Party headquarters? Did you know about that?
No, and I've already said that. I answered that question either the day or the second day after.
What they did is they sent out a text, and I got one too. It basically said that, under a Labor government, there would be more boats like this. That's what they did. This was a scam. And this was a scam no different to Children Overboard that they did. It's disgusting. And she needs to apologise. That's where she should have started. But instead, she's spin doctoring the whole thing. Poorly, I might add.
The election, I had absolutely no knowledge.
So you were hoodwinked by someone in the Liberal Party to do their bidding, essentially.
Would you actually like me to answer your question?
Look, I would. I want you to be honest and truthful. I think the people deserve it.
Please be careful with that accusation, because I have always been. truthful, and I have always answered the questions that have been.
No, you got to call them on it. You got to call them on it. That there was a perfect moment of, are you sure? Are you sure that you've told the truth? Because this comes from a clearly lying former government. No, she's clearly lying.
Put to me.
Oh, Karen, can you just
And the
answer this one
questions
for
that-
us? Was Scott Morrison's office pressuring you to get this information into the public domain?
I was asked by the Prime Minister to issue the statement, and that is exactly what I did.
So that's a yes.
Yes, that's a definite yes. If you could drag her in there and then go, what did you know and when did you know? This is definitely an ICAC issue. This is definitely something where you're sending out these text messages in real time about what Border Force is doing. You're sending out all of this, beacon stuff of, you compromised Border Force in real time about a boat that was, there, and then tried to insinuate that they knew that a Labor government was coming in. Why? We didn't even know that. I sat up on election night hoping and praying that they were going to get in. Why would people from overseas that have travelled thousands of kilometres be closely watching our election? That's weird. They're too busy trying to survive, you idiots.
The official timeline has the Prime Minister holding this press conference before the official statement went out. What's the precedent for that?
Well, there were a whole range of things happening, and that's in the report as well. My focus was on getting the statement live to make sure that there was a briefing of the opposition, and both of those steps were critically important. Now, if you go back to the lead up to...
That's not how you do it. You brief the opposition in closed quarters. You do not do it in real time where Border Force are pissed. Where they're saying, this is going to compromise my men and women. That's not it at all, and she knows it. She knows it. I don't care who told her what story to go live with, but there will be hearings on this. You can bet you there's going to be more information on this, and it will be said that she lied in this interview.
The election, it was very clear that there was a lot of media reporting, there was a lot of social media reporting about this being a scaremongering tactic by the coalition government to create fear about whether or not there would be boat arrivals. Now, I was advised early-ish in the morning of election day that a boat had been intercepted. Later, we then went down the pathway of issuing a statement. It was a statement that was very operational in its focus, and I think that was the appropriate way for it to happen.
ICAC needs to get involved in this. I agree. This can't be just a thing where you can go, oh, I just kind of lied a little. No, this was the nation watching. This was like election day where you're glued to the TV going, oh, God, I hope my person wins. Look, win, lose or draw, whoever you backed, this was a dumb move. And this all goes back to the old, can I pull another children overboard stunt? People are not your toy. Refugees are not playthings. You cannot use them to prop up your political belief. No matter if you're on the left or the right, they're not toys. They're people. Refugees should never be used, particularly when they talk about, the offshore processing and how that keeps people safer. There's no evidence of that. I really can't stress how ridiculous it is that every election cycle, refugees seems to be this huge topic, not cost of living, not, really big things that could really be an issue here. Energy, not, and it's all spun and done in this disgraceful way. She needs to be taken to ICAC. This isn't just, whoopsie, I got it wrong. This is bad. Sending out text messages going, if Labor's elected, there'll be more like this. No, they're very evil. People are not your toys. They make me so furious. The LNP need to stop their rhetoric on people that come here by boat. I would take 1 million of them over one LNP person. Oh my God. Can we just put the LNP in the boat back to, what these people are running from? So they can stop fear-mongering about it, so they can experience what these people are running from. Oh, it's so gross.
So 2 things happened from my point of view, the issuing of a statement and the briefing of the opposition.
Rick, do you believe what the former minister is saying this morning?
I mean, I have to take her at her word, but there were certainly many things in that report that point to a disgraceful, topsy-turvy upending of conventions and institutions in Australia. I think it's a poisonous application of how these things are meant to be run, and I think everyone should hang their heads in shame who were involved in it.
That is just not true, Rick. And at no time did the secretary...
Yeah. You should hang your head in shame, he says. She's like, well, that's just not true. We'll tell that to ICAC and we'll see what they say, hey? We'll let them be the official arbiters of what's reality.
Secretary of the department pick up the phone to
They
me
pushed back,
and say
Karen.
it should not be done.
They pushed back and said they actually pushed back. It's in the report. Your office tried to get a department to act outside of its apolitical mandate. That
Rick,
is a
That is
Karen,
not
we're
true.
going to have to
That
leave
is
this
not
here.
true.
Thank you both very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be sharing a statement with something like that. That looks a little bit dodgy, dude. Just going to put that out there. That looks real bad. Real bad. Okay. So, where are we now? Okay. So, I've been reading about a Dutton-proof climate change. Now, I thought they're not in government. What do you mean Dutton-proof it? I think it's more LNP-proof it, the way I want to put it out there. When I read this, I thought that's an interesting way to view how we should deal with it. Is just go around the LNP. They're going to do everything they can to be anti-climate. They've got a lot of money in investors like Forrest Twiggy and Gina Reinhart, which are very big on mining and that sort of practice. Barnaby Joyce is well known for having amazing ties to Gina and her lot. So it's not as if they're going to turn around and go, hey, yeah, well, our party's thesis is wrong and everything we've been doing is wrong. They're never ever going to see the light on climate change. So if you join the Liberal Party thinking, hey, they've got a climate change policy, have I got a bridge to sell you? No, they don't. They don't have a climate change policy. And they can hand you as many fluffy pamphlets as they want to, and it's literally a pamphlet. It's not even a proper brief. And it's pretty much these weird commitments that aren't commitments. So how did Catherine Murphy address that? This was an interesting read. So Labor, the Greens and the Teals should be focusing on widening the footprint of support for climate action rather than preserving product of differentiation. So what she's asking for is like a unity ticket from every other party to go, look, leave the LNP behind, let's get this done and let's unite and do this. Now, I think that is our best bet out because the climate isn't going to wait. We need this fast approach that's going to be sustainable. And no, drilling coal for the next even 10 years is unmitigated damage. You know, this whole idea that we can have all this stuff burning the same way that we do today and nothing bad will happen. You're living in a fantasy world. It's just not reality. So let's use the whole forgetting about staffers and where you place a flag and all that other crap. And let's get to the juicy part of why the Teals and Greens and Labor, what they all agree on, and that's climate change. And they do. And Catherine Murphy really delves into the heart of that. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed was her talking about how long it took to address something like this and how the games of this didn't go far enough and how they discussed that even just the smallest starting point and building on that starting point is better than no starting point at all. And I think that that was an overwhelming message to Labor. Do something and build on it gradually. But don't take too long for that first step, because that first step needs to happen yesterday, and make every step so much bigger than the last that it overshadows any idea that we're so far behind. Well, not idea, fact that we are so far behind on dealing with climate change that there's irreparable damage done. There is no doubt that we have done irreparable damage to the environment. But let's hope that some of what we've done can be curtailed a little. I still think the seas are going to rise, and there's going to be major fires, more floods, a lot of this stuff. And this isn't just because of what we burnt before, it's because of what we're doing now. And we're not doing anything now. And now's the time. I think this is it. Parliament sits on Monday, and I want to hear what they say. So, Dutton locked the Liberal Party into voting against Labor's 43% emissions reduction target because he thinks he can continue to weaponise medium-term climate change action against the new government at a time when inflation is running hot and interest rates are rising. Now, that's a really interesting point too. This will drive down energy costs. Actually, dealing with climate change is more cost benefits to the overall economy. It doesn't just give you a better environment, it creates a crap load of jobs, not just a good amount of jobs, but it also creates this environment where we're building for the future, and each piece of technology gets cheaper and better preserved. So I really think there's a lot of benefits to doing this. I've been reading about an initiative where Labor are talking about giving incentives for owners to put solar on renters' households, for instance. That is massive. That is a massive step in the right direction in dealing with climate change. I do largely think, though, where Catherine Murphy doesn't really, she thinks that the LNP are part of the conversation in a way, like being the opposition is somehow part of it. They're never ever going to come to the show. I don't care who you put up there and prop up on that little box to say, hey, I'm part of the leader, and this is it. Yeah, if people open up their eyes to the potential of new industries. Now think about it. Elon Musk didn't just get rich through making a car. He made an electric car. And he made a lot of money out of doing that. And he created how many jobs in doing that? Now, his ethical beliefs I'm not going to get into, but the man made squillions out of it. And here's the thing, why aren't we jumping in headfirst in on this? This is real. And I really want to discuss how that won't just build for us. Who needs to pay tax? He does. And that's something that I think we need to have a chat about, him paying the appropriate tax. And paying his workers better. I've heard that his workers don't get the best treatment. There is so much to this debate, and I don't even think it's a debate anymore. Climate change is settled. That's it. That's no longer part of the discussion. We know it's real. We know it's here, and we know that the fires are more intense. The floods are more intense. We know bad stuff is down the pipe. We can see it in our real life moments. We can see the endangered species list growing. That's not up for debate anymore. Now, what's left on the table is, which road do you take? Do you take, you can't take them seriously when they're saying nuclear either, because that's 10 times more expensive. So when the LNP are having this disingenuous debate, they're always saying, oh, no, we do have a clean energy way of doing it. Yeah, it is sad because we're pretending like it's still like this up in the air issue. It's not. It's already settled. We're already there. We're at the point where there's no returning. You can't unwind thousands of species that won't come back. Each of them were dependent on one another to survive. At some point, there's too much damage. I mean, I found it very interesting. There's this one company, I know this diverts from it. They're called Lendlease, and Friendly Geordies talks about them all the time. They built this koala crossing in the middle of one of their building sites. They built a koala crossing in the middle of the building site. But yet they were telling people, no, there's no koalas around here. You can't make this stuff up. There's literally like, no, why are we letting them do this? We can't have a civil debate with the coalition. They can't even agree in their own party. They're not going to come to the table on any of this. And the Nationals are so far gone, and they're controlling the narrative. Dutton thinks he's holding the crown, when really it's the Nationals that are holding the crown. They're the one holding the jewel of all their votes. I tell you what, they would have been obliterated without the Nationals. Could you imagine the LNP vote without the Nationals? Just think of that for a second. And just remember, the LNP have never been independently voted on their own. Ever. They've needed the Tea Party and lots of other parties, but they've never, ever gotten in on their own right. Why is that? Do you think that their policies are just that awful that they just can't? Yet Labor does. That's a very interesting point I want to get to. Okay. Not all of his colleagues are thrilled. Dutton's. The Liberal Party has managed to loosen up 10 heartland seats over the past 2 election cycles because it can't bring itself to do the right thing. Yeah, the obvious thing, the necessary thing, face up to the reality of the climate crisis. Some Liberals don't want to be a Trump rump. Simon Birmingham and Jane Hume. This is the thing. They know that this Trumpian dystopian weirdness won't work here. They can't go with, oh, we're just going to ban books and we're going to deny climate change. It doesn't work here. Weirdly, we fund our schools a bit better. We don't need to do this weird talk like Trump people. We believe in climate change. We understand it's real. And I tell you what, you had the Holly Hughes running around telling people, oh, the kids are indoctrinated in our schools. That was the other bizarre thing that I managed to get from this, is that their talk on it still is so dinosaur-like. It's like, did you see the year 2000 or did you miss that part? That's kind of where I'm looking at them at the moment. They're not being serious about their discussions. And that's really sad. Continuing the still whispered insurrection, 2 more Liberals, Bridget Archer and Andrew Bragg, are also reserving their right to cross the floor to support Labor's legislation. See, even amongst their own ranks, they know that this is a shit show. They know that they've got to come to the table at some point and go, okay, I'll concede. And that's part of where we're at. We're not having this serious, real conversation about where we are. And I'm really disappointed because this was the hour to do it. And I don't think that they were ever going to be serious. They're going to keep this tactic of let's stall and not say anything of substance. Okay, I've got a couple more stories and then I've got to run. Okay. So what happened this week? Corruption seemed to be part of where we are. So I had a few more, but I don't think we're going to get to it. Premier Perrott urges Sidoti to resign. New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrott has called for former New South Wales Liberal Minister John Sidoti to resign from Parliament after the state's corruption watchdog found he engaged in serious misconduct. See, now suddenly ICAC means something. When they're going after Gladys, oh hell no, that's not real. But when they're going after the former guy, they're like, he's bait. We can throw him under the bus. The New South Wales Independent Commission Against Corruption on Wednesday recommended seeking advice for possible criminal charges for Mr. Sidoti. The anti-corruption watchdog investigated the now independent MP for Drummoyne, his lobbying of local councillors to rezone block at 5 Dock in Sydney is where his family owned property. The serious and corrupt conduct was found to have occurred between 2013 and 2017, ICAC said. Mr. Perrott told the Drummoyne MP he should leave public office. I've contacted him to inform him that he should resign from the Parliament, he said on Wednesday. Should Mr. Sidoti resign, New South Wales Government would move a motion to have him suspended. They've also sought legal advice for it. Labor has said that they will support the motion to suspend him if he didn't. And then the Drummoyne MP said he would fight to clear his name, believing ICAC made errors in its report. Prove it, buddy. Okay, he said the commission had not interviewed people from crucial meetings to support his statements and failed to chase exculpatory evidence. That's what proving it does. The report had a number of unfounded inferences, errors, and assumptions, and finding were completely rejected. See, why do the guilty people always make this? But hey, you miss things without actually showing it at the hearing that they missed anything. In its report, ICAC recommended seeking advice from the Director of Public Prosecutions over prosecuting him. So he's going to go to jail. It's not a case of if, it's a case of when. Alrighty, so that puts us at just a little bit over an hour. I want to thank you all for being here. I enjoy these Sunday nights with you guys. I know a lot of you are busy and you just don't have a lot of time to do this with me. I hope you hit the replay, hit like, and leave me a comment. The more comments you leave, the analytics get better. I'm hoping things will get better soon. Thank you, guys. See you next Sunday at 6. Have fun. Night.